And now the world gets back a song that now the angels sing. Oh my gosh. That's the words, right? That was so wonderful. Thank you, Dawn and Max and Maurice and Nancy. And Nancy, you know what's so amazing? Nancy, your glasses. Did you guys notice all the sparkles coming out? Whoa. And that song, Laura, was perfect. Thank you. Okay. The topic title, Tiny Tim doesn't live here anymore. We've all watched the Christmas stories about Scrooge and Tiny Tim and everything. And before this talk, I did some research on the background and what it was really like. And in 1843, London was the biggest city in the world, the most industrialized city, and the most split between the classes. And the poor people in London, what we saw in the movies about the Cratchit family, they were upper middle class. They were single family dwelling, and the poor people lived in like 10 people in a little room. And the average lifespan in the East End was 19 years, with a 20% infant mortality. The protests that happened in the city to try to begin to change these things happened as it was observed that the upper class people, way above Mr. Scrooge, by the way, he was not upper class, were their scraps. They would just throw them away. The poor people, the scraps of the wealthy people was enough to make the poor people just go crazy, at how delicious a gourmet meal they would have, and they just would be thrown away, not even given to the animals. So that was the backdrop of Dickens, and that's what he was seeing. And the people of London wouldn't even go into the East End because they were so terrified of seeing what was happening in their own city. And the pollution, the pea soup fog, which we've heard that, right? It was a yellow-green gas from burning coal. And when the fog came in November, that gas was so full of sulfuric acid that anybody with a lung condition would be in serious trouble. It ate the stone on the buildings. It ate the iron. That was, we have pollution now, but that was the industrial age. That was the most industrialized city in the world. So in that, against that backdrop, was this flowering of humanity. There was so much that came out of that awfulness, and so much of the time, in crises, Spirit comes through to help people. The angels heed the call. We recognize the need and we call out, and finally we can receive, because sometimes, and most of the time, it seems with humanity, that it takes us, we have to get a little bit, we have to run our course, and we have to fail numerous times and hit the wall or hit the floor before we're willing to receive the help that's there, that was there all the time, patiently waiting for us to accept it. The story of Ebenezer Scrooge and his 1957 counterpart, the Grinch, starts out with a character who's innocent, just an innocent child full of hope, needing love, and disappointed over and over until our heart hardens. The heart hardens, and once the heart hardens, it can't receive love. And if it can't receive love, it can't give love. And frequently, it starts taking in the form of material possessions, substances, anything that can substitute for that love, which it needs. We need that. We need that love. And we take in the substitutes, and pretty soon we become completely separated from our fellow human beings. And we can justify seeing, well, just send them to the poorhouse, because to look at that and to be in touch with the suffering of humanity means we have to be in touch with our own suffering, which we've separated from. We can no longer tolerate the pain of our own suffering. And the more we cover it up, the more it seems intolerable. The miracle, to me, of Scrooge and the Grinch is that grace, something greater than all of us, gives them this chance. In Scrooge's case, it's Jacob Marley, his former business partner, wants to save him from the tragic state that he is now in, dragging the chains of his karma around for what seems like eternity. I don't believe it's eternity, but in fact, I believe that Jacob Marley redeems himself by redeeming Ebenezer Scrooge. But he shows Ebenezer Scrooge, he gives him the opportunity to accept these spirits who come. And at first, if you remember the story, Scrooge wants nothing to do with the spirits. He wants nothing to do with spirit offering him a hand until he sees his past, and he sees the wounded child that still is in his heart. And that child is in all of us that needs love, that we have the possibility, the responsibility, and the sole power of healing that inner child. And every one of us, in that sense, is still a child. And the same with the Grinch. The Grinch sees, after he's taken everything, and he sees little Cindy Lou Who. How many people have seen the Grinch? Oh, good. That's what I hope for. He sees the innocence of this child who doesn't have any fear of him. And Santa Claus, why are you taking our Christmas tree? Where to fix the lights, sir? The lights, what a metaphor. So these guys have this experience of acceptance. And the next thing I want to do is I want to take us on a little guided journey where we're going to do two little short vignettes. The first one is we're going to imagine ourselves sitting with someone we love, but not totally. They annoy us. So we can go back and forth between dropping our guard and experiencing, looking. We're going to imagine that we're sitting, looking in the eyes of this person. Nothing is said, and we're just imagining, when we look in their eyes, these words: "You love me." And every thought that comes in to block it, to upset it, to remember some insult or hurt, you just come back to, you love me. And we imagine they're doing the same, but it's not, there's no conditional nature to this. And we start with someone that we love already, and we know they love us, but you know, of course, how that goes. I mean, sometimes they annoy us and we don't love them. So Laura's just going to help us. And what we're going to do, we're just going to close our eyes and we're going to settle for just a few minutes into this. Imagine somebody that you know, that you care for and you know cares for you. And just see them sitting in a chair facing you, and you're facing them, and just settle into that. And you're facing each other, and you feel the warmth of the chair and the greatness of their company. You might smell their cologne. And even though your eyes are closed here, your inner eyes are open and you're looking at them. And allow yourself to feel every feeling that you have, that they love you, and every single inch of doubt, every gram, microgram, proton, subatomic particle of doubt that you have that they don't love you, just let it go. Because all of the things that build the story that they don't love you are false. Because everything is made of love, and we are beings of love, and they can't help but love you. And they may love you in ways that you don't even recognize. You can't possibly even be the judge of whether that's love or not. Just sit there, and I'll be quiet for a minute, and just keep saying in your head, you love me. You love me. You love me. Every little distraction and annoyance, just let it fall or float or whatever it does when you let go of it, and remember, you love me. At the point that the exercise gets uncomfortable, that's where the breakthrough is, so stick with it. You love me. You love me. Now look deeper into that person's eyes until you can see the deep blackness, and let your mind move into that space in their pupils, that empty space, that openness. Move into that space. I've seen stars in others' eyes. I've seen the whole universe. There is eternal love. And when you see that, you are looking at the Christ that dwells in every one of us, our connection to spirit, our higher self, our spirit self, our true self. So many names. You can always be sure when you're with another person and they're doing something that you're not too happy about, that same Christ self is still there. They just may not be operating from it. It's so hard for us to listen to that voice and that guidance. What I'm trying to do by this exercise is help you and help myself connect with that loving spirit that is not only in my being, but it is in others' beings, and it is in life. There's a constant help. The angels are always helping. You can keep your eyes closed or open and whatever's comfortable. I'm just going to read a little bit now. For what can we give praise? For what can we give thanks? For what can we rejoice at this time? Let us not use these words lightly or fail to look in the face of suffering and dread as they walk the earth. The question is not, why do they fill the world? For they have always been here. Do not confuse the quantity of suffering with your ability to examine its qualities. Jesus walked amidst violence and savagery, and yet he said, "Ask that your joy may be full. Ask that your joy may be full." It is the same age-old question, not why, but how to meet this invasion of our hearts and minds by the bitterness of the world. Down the ages comes the answer over and over, again and again in many tongues, from all the steadfast ones. When despair shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against it. And that standard has to be lifted first in the heart through the practiced awareness of our oneness with the indwelling Christ, which is also your higher self, your spirit, the Holy Spirit. But it's not Jesus, the person. It's the Christ which he embodied. I'm not telling you not to have Jesus as your helper, but to make a difference so you know that it's the Christ that is in you and in everyone. Daily make this resolution, this journey, and visit with the Christ, the indwelling Christ. It is a courageous action. It is the constant renewing of our minds in a fiery faith. To everyone comes the angel with glad tidings that the holy thing shall be born of thee is ye and me. And that son, that child will be called the Son of God. And each is born not alone, but with the symbols of fortitude and loyalty, of faith and humility and love and protection. And they stand near us as the wise men stood near the baby Jesus in the stable. You must learn to receive this before you can give it. And you must practice it. You can't just think it. Now that you have taken the stoppers out of your ears, maybe a little, and listened, you will recognize the task of awakening that is before you and the difficulty we have helping you, for we cannot shake you into realization. You must learn this on your own and learn to listen. The world will constantly distract you with emotion and terror and intrigue and desire, but you are not without guidance, and there is an advantage to listening. Most people will drift into sleep and turn their faces from realities so that when they are confronted with cruelty and savagery, they lose their balance and add to the general weight of despair. They have not made their faith an actuality. Do not think this is a selfish protection for your own bodies. We tell you it is a dedication to a way that will bring healing. When you walk in this immortality, which is the present moment, all you do is deny your personal ideas and your personal identity enough to make way for the Spirit, which does not wish to annihilate your personal identity. And when you give of it and you give from it, you are given to. It is though we are pumps. We are just love pumps. And without input, there is no output. And that is all. Oh, and just in case you want to know what happened to Tiny Tim, Scrooge took him to America, to the newly opened Mayo Clinic, where he received healing. In a marvelous technique where they took hot mayonnaise baths, which is how the clinic got its name.